Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react that truly matters." For centuries, human beings have longed for recognition, love, and attention from others. We wait for praise to feel valued, seek acceptance to have a sense of belonging, and rely on others to fill the voids in our souls. But there is a bitter truth: the more we depend on others, the more easily we are disappointed. People's feelings change, circumstances vary, and if our happiness is tied to factors beyond our control, life becomes an endless cycle of uncertainty and emptiness. Stoicism teaches us a fundamental lesson: focus on yourself. When we dedicate our energy to intellectual development, practicing discipline, and controlling our emotions, we stop being influenced by praise or criticism and are no longer shaken by indifference or betrayal. By building inner strength, we no longer need to depend on others to find fulfillment. But how can we achieve this state of freedom? How can we stay focused on ourselves without being swayed by external expectations or the judgments of others? This video will present 7 essential lessons for cultivating a Stoic mindset, living in peace, and remaining strong in the face of any challenge. If you're ready to embark on this journey, leave the number 1 in the comments as a commitment to yourself. Lesson number 1. Control what is within your reach. Human beings often worry about things beyond their control. We suffer from others' opinions, feel disappointed when our affection is not reciprocated, and get frustrated when the world does not work according to our desires. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Many people spend their lives trying to please others, seeking recognition, and hoping for love from those who do not truly value them. They invest too much in what is beyond their reach, and when they fail, they are consumed by disappointment and helplessness. A person who understands the principles of Stoicism, however, views life differently. They focus on what they can control, themselves. Marcus Aurelius was not only a Roman emperor, but also one of the greatest Stoic philosophers. During his reign, Rome faced wars, rebellions, plagues, and personal losses. He could not prevent enemy invasions, change the loyalty of traitors, or bring back loved ones who had passed away. But instead of allowing himself to be consumed by these difficulties, he chose to control himself. In his book Meditations, he wrote about acceptance and serenity in the face of adversity. When everything around him was chaotic, he remained true to his principles, doing what is right, preserving his morals, thinking clearly, and not allowing external circumstances to cloud his judgment. It was this self-control that helped him become one of the greatest emperors in history. Think of a relationship in which you placed great expectations. Perhaps you did everything to win someone over, but the more you tried, the more frustrated you became when you didn't receive what you expected. This happens not only in love, but also in friendships, work, and other social relationships. But the truth is, you cannot control another person's heart. You cannot force them to value you, nor demand that they treat you the way you desire. The only thing you can control is how you treat yourself. When you focus on yourself, you realize that your worth does not depend on others' validation. You can invest your time in developing yourself, taking care of your health, learning, and doing things that bring you happiness. And the most curious part? When you truly learn to love yourself, you stop seeking external approval. Your self-esteem will no longer be defined by others' perceptions. Now imagine you are in a tense meeting, and someone tries to provoke you by belittling you in front of others. If you react with anger, that person will have achieved their goal. They will have control over your emotions. But if you remain silent, simply looking at them calmly and firmly, it will be them who feels unsettled. That is the power of self-control. Stoics understand that when we master our emotions, no one can manipulate us. Silence is not weakness, but rather the manifestation of a strong mind, immune to external influences. Many people believe that happiness comes from gaining respect, love, and success. But in reality, true happiness arises when we stop clinging to what is beyond our control and turn our attention to ourselves. When you stop trying to change what you cannot control, you feel lighter. When you no longer depend on others' reactions, you feel freer. And when you focus on yourself, you realize that you need nothing outside yourself to feel complete. This is the greatest lesson of Stoicism: control what you can control. The rest, let happen as it must. Lesson number 2, do not let others' recognition define you. We grow up in a society where external validation seems to measure our worth. Praise, admiration, and fame can make us feel important. But if we pay attention, we will notice a frightening truth. When we live seeking recognition from others, we hand over control of our emotions to them. We are happy when we receive praise, sad when criticized, and insecure when ignored. What others think of you is not as important as what you think of yourself. This does not mean completely ignoring feedback from the outside world, but rather having a solid value system that is not shaken by fleeting judgments. Today, someone may praise you, but tomorrow, they may turn their back on you. If your self-esteem depends on others' opinions, you will always feel vulnerable. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, lived in the unstable environment of the Roman court. As an advisor to Emperor Nero, he had power, status, and prestige among the aristocracy. However, what made him a great thinker was not fame but his ability to remain true to his philosophy. He did not allow power to corrupt him, nor did he let the recognition of the imperial family define his worth. In the end, when Nero became a tyrant and forced him to commit suicide, Seneca accepted his death with serenity, without complaints or fear. He understood that fame and recognition are merely fleeting illusions, while dignity and tranquility are truly his own. As he once said, until we begin to live without certain things, we do not realize how unnecessary they are. We did not use them because we needed them, but simply because we had them. This reflection applies not only to material possessions, but also to the pursuit of recognition. When you stop craving it, you realize it was never as essential as you thought. We do not need the approval of others to exist, but rather a set of internal values that allow us to remain firm, regardless of external recognition. Imagine walking into a room full of strangers. Do you feel pressured? Do you worry about what they will think if you say or do something different? This is the reality for many people, living under the gaze of others. But when you understand that external judgment does not define your worth, you feel lighter. When you no longer need external validation, you become truly free. There is no need to follow societal standards, impress anyone, or fear rejection. You can focus on your personal growth, becoming the best version of yourself without being distracted by praise or criticism. However, this does not mean isolating yourself or becoming indifferent to the world. Stoicism does not advocate insensitivity, but rather emotional control so that we are not manipulated by external factors. When you stop depending on recognition, your self-esteem is built on genuine values, your beliefs and principles, not the approval of others. This process takes time. At first, it may feel strange not to receive external validation. You may question yourself, am I on the right path? Am I really good at what I do if no one tells me so? But remember, the most enduring recognition comes from within. And this leads us to the next lesson: embrace solitude as part of life. When you stop seeking the approval of others, you face a new reality. But is solitude something to fear or an opportunity for self-discovery? The answer may change your perspective on it. Lesson number 3: accept solitude as part of life. There is something many people fear: solitude. But instead of fleeing from it, those who understand Stoicism learn to embrace it as a gift, an opportunity to know themselves better and strengthen their minds. Stoic philosophers, thousands of years ago, already understood this. To them, solitude was not a threat but a chance to free themselves from dependence on others. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." His words are not just a philosophical reflection, but a principle for those who struggle with loneliness. If we are constantly seeking external recognition and fear being alone, we become prisoners of others. But when we learn to find peace within ourselves, we become truly free. Many people face this fear when a relationship ends or when they have no one to rely on. They feel an emptiness. But ask yourself, does this feeling come from the circumstances or from within you? Stoicism teaches that we cannot control the world around us, but we can always control our reaction to it. If you see solitude as a burden, it will be a burden. But if you see it as an opportunity, it will become one. Take Jorge, for example. He had been in a relationship for years, and when it ended, he went into crisis. He felt empty, as if a part of him had been taken away. However, instead of drowning in pain, he chose to change his perspective. He started reading more, focused on work, and learned new skills he had previously ignored. Most importantly, he learned to appreciate his own silence. At first, solitude was still present. But over time, Jorge realized he had not truly lost anyone. He was merely rediscovering himself. If he continued to depend on others to fill that void, could he ever be truly strong? Would he have control over his life, or would he just be a drifting boat, carried by the emotions of others? We often seek recognition, attention, and superficial conversations just to fill an inner void. But if you cannot find peace in solitude, you will never feel complete, even when surrounded by people. Silence and a quiet mind are not signs of weakness but of strength. Someone who can be alone, without anxiety or insecurity, is truly free. When you learn to embrace solitude, you are no longer manipulated by the need for external validation. You no longer feel the obligation to prove anything to anyone. And in that process, you become strong in a way that few can understand. And most importantly, you will realize that you do not need them. Now, imagine a version of yourself that no longer fears solitude and no longer seeks recognition. A version that can remain silent and feel full of energy. That walks into a room and is not shaken by the looks or opinions of others. This is possible, but it only begins when you accept that solitude is not an enemy but a teacher. Are you ready for this challenge? If you understood this lesson, leave the number 3 in the comments. This is your declaration that you are ready to walk the path of inner freedom. Lesson number 4. Focus on personal development instead of social relationships. There is a truth that many realize but few fully accept. The more you invest in yourself, the less you depend on others. This does not mean you should live in isolation or avoid connections, but rather that you learn to sustain yourself emotionally without being controlled by expectations, judgments, or the absence of someone in your life. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself in your way of thinking." Happiness does not come from others, but from the way you build your life and shape your thoughts. Instead of seeking recognition or waiting for someone to fill an internal void, you can create value for yourself by investing in your intellect, health, and skills. When you truly do this, you will realize that many of the emotional connections you maintained were not a real necessity but a reflection of your own desires. Many times, we believe that social relationships are the fundamental pillar of life and that no one can live without them. However, history shows that the greatest individuals were not those who spent their lives seeking others' approval, but those who dedicated themselves to strengthening themselves internally. Take the example of Leonardo da Vinci, a Renaissance genius, a man who never stopped learning and creating. He did not wait for someone to teach him how to draw, nor did he need validation from others to recognize his own worth. Instead of seeking social recognition, he focused on his intellect, skills, and creativity. The result? He left a timeless legacy that continues to inspire generations. The same applies to you. If you feel an emptiness or notice that you rely excessively on others' attention, do not try to fill it externally. Ask yourself, what can I do to become stronger and more independent? Why is investing in yourself more important than seeking relationships? Every relationship involves uncertainty. The person you believe will always be by your side may leave. Those you trust today may not be there tomorrow. But there is one certainty: you will always have yourself. And when you strengthen yourself, you no longer need anyone to validate your worth. Instead of waiting for someone to change to make you happy, why not use that time to learn a new skill, Read an enriching book? Exercise to improve your health? Develop a resilient mindset to face challenges? Every small step towards personal growth is a step toward an inner freedom that no one can take away from you. A person without skills, without knowledge, and without autonomy will always feel insecure. They will need others to fill gaps and to feel valued. But a person who has invested in themselves, who knows their own capabilities and strengths, will no longer depend on anyone. True power lies in self-control. We have all experienced situations of confrontation, disagreement, or deliberate provocation. The natural instinct of most people is to react, argue, or try to justify themselves. However, those who have truly strengthened themselves choose a different path: silence. Silence is not weakness. On the contrary, it is a sign of someone who does not allow themselves to be ruled by emotions and does not need to prove anything to anyone. That is true strength. No one can control you if you do not react as they expect. When you remain silent in the face of provocation, you take away the power the other person thought they had. When you choose not to engage in pointless arguments, you demonstrate that you do not need to win a debate to know who you are. If there is one thing you should remember from this lesson, it is this: everything you need is already within you. You do not need others to feel complete. You do not need external recognition to know you have value. What you truly need is to dedicate time to your growth, whether intellectually, physically, or spiritually. Because when you have all that, you will no longer need anyone to feel whole. Stop seeking something external to make you happy. Invest in yourself, and you will realize that true happiness was never far away. If this lesson made sense to you, leave the number 4 in the comments. This will not only help you remember, but also encourage others to reflect on this journey of inner strength. Lesson number 5. Face difficulties with resilience, without relying on anyone else's help. Imagine yourself as a solitary climber facing a steep cliff. There is no safety rope, no one behind you to prevent a fall. If you slip, it is just you on your own. Your hands bleed from gripping sharp rocks. Your legs tremble with each challenging step. At that moment, one truth becomes clear: no one can climb for you. No one can overcome your fears in your place. Only you and your inner strength can do that. Stoic philosophy teaches that life is like this climb. Challenges arise without warning, and if we rely on others' help to overcome them, we will remain stagnant. However, when we learn to face difficulties with resilience, without expecting external assistance, we become stronger versions of ourselves. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. What happens around us is often beyond our control, but how we react is entirely in our hands. If you see difficulties as enemies, you will feel fear, frustration, and the urge to give up. But if you view them as tests, opportunities to strengthen your mind and spirit, you will handle them very differently. True strength is born from overcoming obstacles. Take the case of Lucas. He is a young entrepreneur, full of ambition and ideas. However, like many, he faced failures. Clients abandoned him, investors rejected his project, and his product did not achieve the expected success. At first, Lucas sought help. He hoped someone would show him the right path and save him from making mistakes. But then he realized that if he continued relying on others, he would never have real control over his own journey. That was when he changed his mindset. He began to accept failure as an inevitable part of the process. Each setback became a lesson. With every mistake, he learned, improved, and moved forward with greater determination. This resilience not only led him to success, but also transformed him into a solid person who no longer fears difficulties. One of the most valuable lessons of Stoicism is mastery over one's emotions. In the face of challenges, weak people react impulsively. They complain, blame fate, and seek sympathy from others. But those who are truly strong do the opposite. They face difficulties in silence, with a firm gaze and a calm mind. Imagine you are in an important meeting and receive harsh criticism. Someone tries to put you down. You have two choices: react on impulse, argue to defend yourself, and show anger. Act like a true practitioner of Stoicism. Remain silent, not out of fear, but because you know that uncontrolled emotions solve nothing. By facing your challenger with serenity, observing, and choosing your response consciously, you demonstrate true strength. Those who possess resilience are not controlled by external circumstances. They don't need anyone to protect or help them because they are already strong enough to face any situation on their own. When you dedicate yourself to personal growth, strengthening your mind and spirit, you will realize something powerful. You no longer need anyone to feel safe, confident, or fulfilled. This does not mean isolating yourself or rejecting support when necessary, but rather not depending on anyone to find stability. The world is constantly changing, just like people. If your happiness and balance are tied to others, you will always be vulnerable whenever someone leaves your life, fails, or changes. But by building your strength internally, you will have a solid and unshakable foundation: yourself. When you learn to face challenges without needing validation or support from others, the next step is to let go of unrealistic expectations about them. Freeing yourself from expectations. How many times have you been disappointed because someone didn't act as you expected? How many times have you been hurt by unfulfilled promises? If this has ever happened to you, the next lesson will bring a fundamental insight. Expectations are the root of suffering. In our next lesson, we will explore how to free yourself from these expectations and achieve true emotional freedom. Get ready for a new perspective on your relationships and emotions. Remember, the stronger you become internally, the less you depend on others, and that is true strength. Lesson number 6. Free yourself from unrealistic expectations about others. When you expect someone to always understand your emotions or act exactly as you want, you put yourself in a vulnerable position. This happens because expectations are the main cause of disappointments. People don't hurt you because they are inherently bad, but because, at some point, you believed they would be different. Pain arises from the contrast between what we desire and reality, creating a cycle of frustration and disillusionment. Marcus Aurelius stated, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, 'Today I will meet intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, envious, and rude people. They are this way because they do not know the difference between good and evil.'" This reminder is not meant to criticize or condemn, but to teach acceptance. When you understand that human beings are imperfect and will not always act according to your expectations, you will no longer be surprised or overwhelmed by anger, and most importantly, you will stop suffering over what is beyond your control. Reflect on moments when you felt disappointed by someone. Perhaps it was a friend you helped numerous times, but when you needed them, they remained silent. Or a family member from whom you expected understanding, but instead judged you. Maybe a coworker you believed would support you, but when the time came, they prioritized their own interests. Do these situations sound familiar? Our first instinct is usually to blame the other person. We feel betrayed, hurt, and sometimes lonely. But have you ever stopped to think if this disappointment came from your own expectations? If you hadn't expected so much, would you have felt less pain? Imagine a simple situation. You share an important plan with a friend, expecting enthusiasm and support. However, they react with indifference or even skepticism. Your initial reaction may be frustration or anger. But if you take a step back and analyze reality, you will realize that no one is obligated to support all your decisions. People have their own opinions and concerns. Perhaps expecting them to always be on your side is an unrealistic expectation. How to free yourself from unrealistic expectations? The first step is to accept reality. No one is obligated to act according to your expectations. This is not pessimism, but a perspective that makes life lighter. The second step is to focus on yourself. When you spend too much time expecting something from others, you give them control over your emotions. But by directing your attention to your own growth, to what you can control, you'll be less affected by others' inconsistent attitudes. Marcus Aurelius not only teaches us to accept human imperfections, but also to keep our feet on the ground in all circumstances. His teachings do not encourage coldness or detachment, but rather not allowing your emotions to be influenced by external and uncontrollable factors. Start seeing the world more realistically. People are not perfect, just as you are not. When you stop expecting others to always act the way you want, everything will become simpler. You will start valuing sincerity, letting go of what doesn't belong to you, and most importantly, you will find peace within yourself. Reflect on the expectations you have of the people around you. Are they realistic? Can you adjust your perspective to avoid unnecessary frustrations? If you agree that freeing yourself from unrealistic expectations is the path to true freedom, comment 6 below. Lesson number 7. Understand that happiness comes from within, not from the outside. Have you ever wondered why some people, even having everything, money, fame, love, still feel empty, while others, living simply, radiate unshakable contentment? The answer lies in the very essence of happiness. It does not come from what we possess or from others' approval, but from a state of inner peace. This is not just a philosophical concept, but a truth that has been tested over time by those who have truly understood the nature of life. Think of Diogenes, a philosopher of the Cynic school who gave up all material comforts to live in a wooden barrel. He didn't care about society's opinion, didn't seek anyone's approval, and didn't chase wealth or status. Once, Alexander the Great, one of the most powerful men in history, went to him and asked if he needed anything. Diogenes simply replied, "Get out of my light." A simple answer, but filled with absolute power. He didn't need anything but himself, and because of that, he never felt deprived or unhappy. But can this idea be applied to the modern world, full of pressures and expectations? The answer is yes. The true origin of happiness. Just look around us. There are people who own luxurious mansions, expensive cars, and enviable relationships, but at the end of the day, still feel empty. On the other hand, there are those who live simply, without great possessions, but show a genuine satisfaction that many will never reach. What sets them apart? The understanding that happiness does not come from the outside, but from within. Many people spend their lives seeking others' approval, as if their worth depended on it. They fear judgment, contempt, not being good enough. That's why they strive to fit in, to be accepted. But the great paradox is that the more they depend on external factors to define their happiness, the more insecure they become. Today, they may be praised. Tomorrow, those praises may disappear. If your happiness depends on recognition, it's like handing over the key to your soul to someone else, letting them decide when you should feel good or sad. Stoic philosophy doesn't deny the value of possessions or relationships, but it reminds us that they are not the true source of happiness. Someone can lose everything they have, but if they are free in their mind, they will still find peace. Living with this spirit doesn't mean giving up everything, but learning not to depend on those things to find meaning in life. A person can live in luxury without being a slave to it, just as another can adopt a minimalist lifestyle and still feel dissatisfied. It all depends on how you see yourself and the world around you. How to practice this mindset? Start by observing your own feelings. When you feel unhappy, ask yourself, was this caused by an external factor or by how I'm interpreting the situation? If the sadness came because someone treated you badly, remember that that person's reaction doesn't define your worth. If you feel discouraged because you haven't reached a goal yet, remember that happiness isn't in the destination, but in the way you live each day. Additionally, practicing gratitude is a powerful tool to strengthen inner happiness. When you learn to appreciate what you already have, no matter how small, you'll realize you don't need much to feel fulfilled. This doesn't mean abandoning ambitions or dreams, but not letting them determine your worth. Finally, remember, happiness is not something you should seek outside. It needs to be discovered within you. When you stop chasing what's beyond your control, you realize that everything you truly need has always been inside you. Final reflection. Throughout this journey, we've seen that when you focus on yourself, you reduce your dependence on external recognition. Stoic philosophy teaches that happiness doesn't come from what's beyond our control, but from how we deal with our thoughts, emotions, and reactions to life. By cultivating this mindset, you can achieve inner peace and stop being influenced by others' judgment. And you? Are you living according to your own values or still being guided by others' opinions? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this content valuable, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next insights. And don't forget to click on one of the recommended videos on the screen to continue your self-development journey. Until our next meeting.